Good morning, Dr. Hanscom.
Good morning, Les. Again, I'm just allowing you to have the last word because I won't.
Happy Friday.
I mean
Happy
the
Friday.
first word. I will never get the last word, so I just gave you the first word.
Come on, David. Happy Friday, man.
Anyway, happy Friday to you. How was your
Okay,
week this week?
It was good. Like I said, it's always learning lessons. As my grandmother said, you don't make mistakes, you learn from these experiences. So I've learned a lot this whole week.
Well, it's interesting in deep learning, which is how genius is formed. The fastest learning by far occurs from correcting mistakes. It's a huge difference. I mean, that's the deal. So today we're going to talk about a topic that's really key, and the essence of healing is awareness. And I did write a reference up on the site called The Way to Love by Dr. Anthony DeMello. And he is a Jesuit priest, but it's not a religious book. It's called The Way to Love, but love is awareness. And he calls it right out that anytime you label somebody positively or negative, say, hey, what a great guy or girl, or I can't really stand that person. All you've done, with a positive label, you projected your view of yourself onto the word or tone of voice that person said. You don't know who that person is. So labeling takes it out of awareness, or when you're reacting or anxious, you're in the past, you're not in the present. So judgment is lack of awareness. So what you're trying to do is to open up your consciousness, your senses, to be open to anything. And what I've found is that there are moments, sometimes longer, where I just sort of experience the next sensation, labels disappear. It's a really remarkable place to be. And it's way more interesting than just continually projecting my opinion onto the rest of the world. So when you're aware and open, some things aren't so great. I mean, it doesn't mean you're always happy. I mean, I will allow myself a label of pleasant or unpleasant because it's not all pleasant. But at least I'm aware and feeling the unpleasantness, feeling the pleasantness. And it's a remarkable place to be. It's really exciting. So in that state, your body's chemistry changes, your body functions better. And again, when you're in chronic pain and trapped, you tend to be angry and frustrated, which blocks awareness. And anger and awareness cannot exist in the same room. So that's why it's a learned skill. And Les is going to talk about alessism this morning. He's already hit me twice. Those are sucker punches, Dr. Arya.
They're uppercuts, David, uppercuts.
Oh, uppercuts. I couldn't have stopped him no matter what.
Yeah, I'm too short to reach you, but I tried.
All right, so I'm going to let Dr. Arya speak this morning. I do have respect for Dr. Arya, by the way. We've learned a lot from each other. Anyway, Dr. Arya, you did say something I thought was really helpful this morning because it's just a spot that I never recognized until the last few years. I didn't recognize this spot of just living in awareness even existed. And you had I think a lessism for it.
Well, kind of, and so how about we unpackage what you said first, and then we'll kind of even provide maybe a tool. David, so one of the things that we were talking about, audience, is that David and I were talking about how just being aware and judgments, it's just to judge is to be human. We judge something as pretty and nice, as David was talking about, and something that we don't like, or we have a strong opinion. May that be, about your mind, about your body, about someone, about political stuff. There's a judgment there, right? So what we're talking about is to be fully aware that you're actually doing it. I wanted to bring it back to the brain. So it's always good to recognize when we talk about these concepts, there's something operating different mechanisms in our brain, different networks. So let's kind of pause here for a second and talk about something called the PCC, the posterior cingulate, cingulate, cingulate gyrus. The posterior cingulate cortex, the PCC. The posterior cingulate cortex is basically in the middle front. It's like in the back. It's in the front, but it's right in the back of the front part of your brain. And what that does is that's the part where we personalize things, when we are self-referential. When someone walks by you and they actually bump you, the first thing is like, what the heck? Or we might go like, what's the matter with that person? Because we assume that that person did it. So then we reference ourselves. Our brain centers have certain parts like that. So what David is talking about is that when we sometimes personalize, like we take things too personally and we make it more about ourselves than it's someone else, when we actually are judgmental, those parts actually light up. Check this out. The PCC, the posterior cingulate cortex, actually communicates directly to the amygdala. Your amygdala, we have two of them. That's the size of your thumbnails. And the amygdala is basically the smoke detector. And it senses. It has a lot of emotional sensory coding, which means it's like the emotional seat of your brain, so to speak. So when we get fired up and wired up, that part really pulls on memories. It talks to a part of the memory banks called the hippocampus. So there's a bunch of operations that happen. Let's put this all together. When you judge, it's not just about judgment. David talked about how the past shows up. Yep, a lot, the way the brain operates is when we have a judgment about ourselves and others, we are pulling old stories and images and sensations to the present. And then we add our thoughts to it. And then that actually goes back into a file drawer. So the next time you see someone that makes that comment or treats you a certain way, the file drawer in the brain pulls out, it comes to the front part, and you have an opinion. It's very complex, but I was just simplifying it. But there's an emotional charge to our opinions. And when we let that emotional charge of opinions kind of embody us, we become that thought, that emotion, and even that sensation in our body. So anger can take on a whole life of its own. And so judgment has that flavor of anger. Judgment can also be positive, right? So what we want to show you is this: can you just be aware? Being aware actually reduces the primitive parts of the brain and actually allows the Wi-Fi, the front part of your brain, so to speak, to come on. That's where the wisdom comes in, this ancient practice of just being mindful. And just to let you know, as mindfulness is not Buddhism or anything like that, throughout all religions, people practice mindfulness, even in Christianity, is to be aware of what shows up in your thoughts and body. With that said, DeMello is talking about is when you are aware of this love, it's easier to be in love with people and self and acceptance when you watch your labeling. That's the big message, I think, David, which is, I think it's really fantastic for a Friday, is to watch how we judge ourselves, good or bad. And it's not that you shouldn't judge, just be aware of it. And what is that in service of?
Well, if you're judgmental, that blocks awareness. But if you try not to be judgmental, it's even worse, right? You're suppressing. So that's where awareness, you get to watch yourself be judgmental. You get to watch yourself be non-judgmental. And then I actually what I used to do in situations, I used to actually call out the labels to myself. I have you labeled this, this, and this. So by naming the labels, then I could work past them and start becoming aware of what's going on. But I think the message today is that it's just incredible. Think about this carefully, is that it's just incredibly more interesting to keep pulling in new sensations and new thoughts and whatever, because it just gets tedious just giving advice, your opinions, all this stuff just happens all the time, gossiping. It just wears you out in a way because it's just you. And I'm not that interesting. Ask my wife.
I don't know about that, David. I have asked her. She said you are interesting.
I mean,
But
but you get tired of hearing yourself talk. I did say, my fellows used to ask me, well, don't you get tired of talking? I go, not really, but anyway, different story.
but
All right. We're going to finish off today. So Dr. Arya, as usual, has some very sage advice, which I thought was excellent, called the STOP technique. Is that what you said?
yeah, absolutely. So just two things. If you don't feel like writing this down, so grab a paper and pen and write this, STOP. It's an acronym, STOP. And after I get done with telling you what stop is, to teach you how to basically pause purposefully, intentionally, so you're not drunk in your emotions and thoughts and judgments. When I get done with that, I'm going to give you a quick, simple thing. If you're like, I don't feel like doing that stop thing, that's too complex. For those of you who are interested in learning and growing and just wanting something a little bit more in depth, STOP stands for literally, S stands for literally stopping, pause, stop. T stands for take a breath. How many? Take as many breaths as you need to just feel that shift of your shoulders dropping down. It could be 3 breaths. It could be 5 breaths. It could be 10 breaths. Keep it simple. Take a breath. S, stop. T, take a breath. Feel that breath. O stands for, watch this, observe what is showing up. So scan your body from head to toe and notice what is the emotional charge and where in your body. Scan inside, and to get some space between your thoughts, emotions, and sensations, scan your environment. Look outside through the window, find a tree, and find a leaf. Observe what's around you. So get some distance from your mind and body, and then come back in. So observe means observe what just showed up in your body and where. Observe there's something else beyond you and what you're struggling with. Observe your environment. Easiest thing is find something in the distance, notice it, look at it, look around the room, then come back in. So observe inside, outside. S, stop. T, take a breath. O, observe inside and outside. P, proceed with values. When you notice you've been judgment or judgy, what you want to do is this. Proceed means this. Proceed with how do you wish to be, and that's called a value. A value is a mental quality of action. For example, let's just say I heard David say something and it irritated me. I stopped, took a breath, observed where.
That was on purpose, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was a slip. Okay.
It worked. Okay, I feel good about that.
So,
I won.
so you did, David. An illusion is a control, but let's continue. So,
Okay.
so you observed your emotional charge, and to get some space between your mind and body, it's a grounding technique. Look at what's around you and what's kind of in your environment. I usually pick a leaf or a distance or a tree, and then I come back in, and then I proceed. And when I hit the P, which is the STOP, I ask myself, proceed with values, which means, how do I wish to show up today in this difficult moment? I wish to be kind and forgiving. And so I forgive myself for maybe even having that thought, and I forgive David or whomever it is. And then I go about my day. That's called sort of a STOP acronym. It's a pause, it's a mindful, it's an awareness. And when you can do that, you'll find out you'll have a little bit more love for yourself and others. If you don't want to do that, simply do this. What David talked about is labeling. In meditation, when I, for example, sometimes when I'm not doing the stop, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm noticing as I am becoming a little Krabby Patty, that's taken from SpongeBob.
Is that a lesson also?
I think it's become mine now. So I use it with my patients. When you're a Krabby Patty, yep, when you're always whining about something, or Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore was like, it's not gonna work. So if you get into one of those Eeyore or Krabby Patty moods, what I want you to do is just kind of label judging, say it 3 times. And you're saying judging to make you aware that where you're heading is you're actually driving in the past. You're playing out the past. So when you find yourself very reactive, it's most likely the past just showed up in the present through the brain system. And you're going to notice it through your words. And so remember we talked about this week? When you get judgy or angry, you cannot see past you.
So my word of the day is judgy.
Judgy. So just label the thought as judging, or you can say, getting judgy. That's just to wake you up that that's what's happening. It's kind of like low fuel, like a dashboard message that you need to pull off the road and get some gas. David, back to you.
We actually did a variation of this technique in surgery with just a dramatic decrease in complications because we became connected to every move. Every move was totally connected. So our brains weren't racing. We were actually focused, but we connected to how you've always said, how do you want to show up? So the question for us was, how do I want to show up for this next move? I mean, honestly, it becomes automatic. Yeah. So it was a remarkable change in concepts by just honestly saying, okay, things aren't going well right now. How do I want to show up? So instead of reacting, we were connecting. Huge difference. And that's what awareness is connecting to what's right in front of you right now. This is it. Yeah. So I know a little over time, but I do want to finish with this quote I read a couple of weeks ago called it's about Solzhenitsyn, and is how do you want to show up when things are tough? And that's what we're trying to talk about is with awareness, anger, and frustration. By the way, I just have to bring this back to chronic pain. You're asking, well, what does it have to do with chronic pain? Well, when you're angry and frustrated and out of awareness, your physiology's off and you do hurt more. And you don't hurt more because it's psychological, but your nerve conduction increases, you have excitatory neurotransmitters, and it changes your actual experience of pain. So it's all about calming down, and one of the most powerful ways to do this is awareness. But I do want to finish with this, and it's a little bit long, and we know we're a little bit over, but I do want to read this. So it's to me, I've read this multiple times, and here it is. What about the main thing in life, all of its riddles? If you want, I will spell it out for you right now. Do not pursue what is illusionary, property and position, All that is gained at the expense of your nerves decade after decade is confiscated in one fell night. Live with a steady superiority over life. Don't be afraid of misfortune and do not yearn after happiness. It is, after all, the same. The bitter doesn't last forever, and the sweet never fills the cup to overflowing. It is enough if you don't freeze in the cold, and if thirst and hunger don't clog your insides, if your back isn't broken, if your feet can walk, if both arms can bend, if both eyes see, and if both ears hear, then whom should you envy and why? Our envy of others devours us most of all. Rub your eyes and purify your heart, awareness, and prize above all those who love and prize above all those who love you and wish you well. Do not hurt them or scold them, and never part from any of them in anger. After all, you simply do not know. It might be your last act before your arrest, and that is how you will be imprinted on their memory. So that's just really a very profound. This is a person who was in Siberia, in the camps, etc. And of course, his perspective is different. But honestly, all you have is this very second, and connecting to this very second allows you to live your life, whatever that life's going to give you in this very second. And this perspective about how do you want to show up when times are tough is really, really critical. So one less stop means what less? Then we'll close here.
Stop, again, is a great time just to take what David said there and just merge it on how you really wish to show up during difficult times. That's a great one, David. Hope you guys do replay this and listen to it again. And then I'd like you to try this for the rest of the week, is try to use the STOP acronym to pause mindfully, to be fully aware, so you're not drunk in your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations, because you have a choice. S stands for, this is STOP, S-T-O-P acronym. S stands for literally stopping. T, take a breath, 3 to 5 breaths. O, observe where the emotional charge is in your body located. Then get some distance from it by looking at things in your environment, or better yet, further away, like a tree or a leaf. Just keep your eye on it and then come back in just a few seconds. P stands for proceed, and that proceed with values, which translates to, how do I wish to show up during this very difficult moment or in this moment? There you are.
All right, Dr. Aryam. So I will take that in mind today, and appreciate your thoughts, and have a great Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, you too. Everyone be safe, and thank you, everyone. Thanks, David.